Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us tmosso@the1916company.com. It is in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line. For inquiring about the price of this or any of our watches, email tmosso@the1916company.com for pricing. This is one for the old guard. In recent years, under new management, Breitling has moved away from its larger case sizes, its most expressive designs, and the kind of style that emerged in the late Schneider era. But there's also a certain kind of Breitling fan who came of age in the 2000s and the 2010s, when the three Bs were bigger, bolder, and Bentley. And for that kind of old guard collector, we have this. The Breitling Avenger Chronograph GMT, 45 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel. It is big and it is bold, and it is 16.5 millimeters thick with a broad wingspan of 55.4 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip. You got your 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs, which doesn't even look that large on a watch of this size, but it is nicely proportional to the case as a whole. Now, this watch is far too large for me. We'll zoom out a little bit. You can see on my wrist 16 centimeters in circumference. The watch is a bit overwhelming. Although the shape of the lugs is agreeable, the sheer span of them means that they're going to project over the edge of my wrist a bit, so I recommend your wrist be at least 17 centimeters in circumference if you're going to consider this watch. The nice thing about Breitling straps is past and present, they've always been very robust and luxurious. This is a lot of leather. Now you can see on the top we have a contrasting stitch, white against black. On the bottom, calfskin, thick cut. You can't actually see the bright yellow when it's on the wrist. And of course, this is a brand new Breitling factory strap, no crimping, no gouging. It is paired with a deployant clasp, single fold, and you can see the Breitling wing logo, a twin trigger release, so you have to press both of those to open it up. The strap is thick cut. You really don't get shorted the material here. Now, the case features these almost grenade-like sort of pomegranate segmentations, but what they are is knurling so that you can more easily get a grip on the chronograph pushers and that triple row knurled crown. It is a screw-down crown. As you can see on the case back, the watch is 300 meters water resistant, so while Breitling is often associated with aviation, this is actually a diving chronograph. Screw-down crown, as you might expect, and then in profile, you can see, by the way, pre-owned watch, all cards on the table. Sometimes pre-owned watches have little marks on them, but you can see that we have a captive bezel design. So these screws are not ornamental. They actually fix the bezel to the case. So you need to dismantle this bezel to remove it. You can't snap it off like you can a Tag or an Omega or Rolex bezel. These captive bezel designs are very tough. That's why typically you see them on Breitlings, Zinns, and very little else. We also have the rider tabs that were pioneered on the 1980s Chronomat. They make it easier to grip the bezel when your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved. It is a 120-click bezel. It has a nice crisp action, and because of the 120 click, you can place it precisely. You can also see that there's a chimney. See this little polished silver ring between the bezel and the crystal? That protects the crystal in the event that the flank of the case takes a hit. We'll do a loom shot here. And you can see there's no shortage. You can easily read the bezel pearl, so you can use the timing bezel to time concurrently with the chronograph. You can see the chronoseconds hand visible, so you know that your dive watch is running in the dark. Just keep the chrono going. Now, the dial features white numerals on a black base and then gray subregisters, each one slightly countersunk with a concentric pattern. We have an applied polished Breitling wing logo. Again, that's the old style logo. And then outboard, we have a Rehaut, that is the 24-hour scale for the second time zone. You could see that the hands are a sort of fine-grained blasted silver. That's a nice matte anti-reflective treatment. And then we have the ability to set our 2 time zones. So let's talk about the setting features of this watch. We have the all-out hacking seconds, which stops the seconds hand, stops the chronograph, stops everything, and allows you to set everything in sync. You can see we have the 24-hour hand, which makes 1 circuit of the dial per day, and then the 12-hour hand, which makes 2. But if I want to set them separately, there's the intermediate position where I can set the date in one direction with the quick set, and then in the other direction I can set the GMT or the 24-hour hand for that independent second time zone. You can see that the numerals on the dial have been essentially stamped from the reverse side, but they have the height above the dial that you would get with an applique system, so they look upscale and the dial doesn't look flat. It's a nice touch. Taking a look at the case back, doesn't give away much, but you can see this is an Avenger Chronograph GMT, and it says as much. Also says it's a certified chronometer. A means ACA steel, 24 is Breitling's code for this Valjoux 7754 Chronograph GMT movement, and then 3 means it's COSC certified. So it is a 7754, which is the GMT version of the 7750, unidirectional automatic winding, 42-hour power reserve, 25 pivot joules, 4 hertz beat rate, and of course it has the 12 and 24-hour independent time zones. 5 position adjusted. It is a certified chronometer, which means it has been through the COSC's 2-week battery of tests as a movement. And then the chronograph itself is a combination of a cam system that is very finely tuned for an exceptionally crisp response. While it's not quite as crisp as the best column wheel setups, it's actually better than some average column wheel setups. So this is a well-tuned, precisely manufactured cam. You can also see that when the chronograph seconds hand starts, there's scarcely any extraneous action. If you press and hold the chronograph start-stop, you could see that there's barely any move because the 7750 architecture employs a oscillating pinion. While it's not quite as smooth as a true vertical clutch, the oscillating pinion is a type of lateral clutch that has very, very little play in it, which is why we're seeing increasing interest in this age-old system from high-end brands like De Bethune, FP Journe, and Richard Mille. But it's also germane to the 7750 architecture, which is always nice. As a pre-owned watch, this is not a perfect timepiece. Though you can see with most of the original packing plastic on here, the owner made that one mark and literally no others. If you're interested in this timepiece, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.